Less than 24 hours. That's all it took for a celebration of love to turn into a devastating tragedy. What should have been the beginning of a lifetime together became a harrowing crime that stunned an entire community. Her young bride was no more, and the man she trusted with her heart, a preacher admired for his fiery sermons on faith and morality, was at the center of it all. This is a story of betrayal and deception, a carefully orchestrated lie unraveled in the most horrifying way, exposing how far one man would go to protect a secret he thought he could hide forever. Marcel Gaines, a preacher respected by his congregation, carried a burden of shame so deep that it would ultimately destroy the very life he claimed to cherish. Raina Porter, a woman full of hope and love, believed in the sanctity of their bond. She trusted Marcel's promises of devotion and purity, holding on to belief that they were walking a path guided by faith. But beneath the surface of their vows lay a truth she could never have imagined, a truth that would shatter the foundation of their union and lead to unthinkable consequences. We've all been told to believe in love, to trust those we care about. But what happens when that trust is used as a weapon? When the person you love most hides behind a facade of righteousness, only to betray you in the cruelest way imaginable, leaving devastation in their wake. In this story, we will uncover the events that led to their ill-fated union. We will explore the lies, the confrontation, and the deadly choice that changed everything. What happened on their wedding night? Why did Marcel go to such lengths to conceal his secret? And how did it all unravel just hours after their vows? Welcome to Ruthless Realities. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this is a story you will never forget. Trust me on that. Marcel Gaines was a man who wore his faith like armor, a preacher in his mid-30s. He was known throughout his community as a passionate and unwavering voice of morality. Marcel's sermons were electrifying, drawing crowds eager to hear his words on living a life of purity and righteousness. For many, he was more than a spiritual leader. He was a beacon of hope and guidance. But Marcel's carefully curated image hid a deeply personal struggle that had shaped his life in ways few could imagine. Growing up, Marcel's life was anything but easy. As a child, he was often the target of ridicule among his peers. His classmates were relentless, mocking him for reasons that cut deeper than anyone realized. These experiences left him with a profound sense of insecurity, one that would follow him into adulthood. Marcel learned early on to mask his vulnerability with a persona of confidence and strength. By the time he reached his teenage years, he had become adept at hiding the source of his deepest shame, a secret he vowed to protect at all costs. In his early 20s, Marcel found solace in religion. The church became his refuge, offering him not only a sense of purpose, but also a way to shield himself from the vulnerabilities of romantic relationships. Becoming a preacher allowed Marcel to establish boundaries that aligned with his personal insecurities. By advocating for purity and chastity, he could avoid intimacy without raising suspicion. To the outside world, Marcel was a man of principle and conviction. But in reality, his moral stance was rooted in fear, a fear that the truth about himself would be discovered. Raina Porter, on the other hand, was a woman full of life and compassion. In her late 20s, Raina was admired for her radiant beauty and kind heart. She grew up in a loving and supportive family, surrounded by the teachings of faith and traditional values. Her parents had instilled in her a deep respect for love and commitment, which shaped her belief in the sanctity of marriage. Raina's life had not been without challenges, but her optimistic spirit carried her through difficult times. She worked as a teacher at a local elementary school, dedicating her days to nurturing and inspiring young minds. Her evenings were often spent volunteering at community events or attending church services, where she found comfort and guidance in her faith. It was during one of these services that Raina first met Marcel. His sermons had a way of reaching into her soul, speaking to her in a way no one else ever had. His words about living a life of purpose and spiritual discipline resonated deeply with her. Raina admired his passion and dedication, seeing in Marcel the kind of moral leader she had always dreamed of marrying. Their connection was immediate. Marcel was drawn to Raina's warmth and sincerity, qualities that stood in stark contrast to the guarded persona he had cultivated over the years. Raina, in turn, was captivated by Marcel's confidence and charisma. She believed he was a man of integrity, someone who practiced what he preached. As their relationship grew, Marcel's stance on abstinence became a defining aspect of their bond. He insisted that they remain chaste until marriage, citing his commitment to his faith as a reason. For Raina, this was both challenging and inspiring. She admired Marcel's dedication to his principles, even as she struggled with the boundaries it placed on their intimacy. Marcel's convictions earned him admiration from Raina's family and friends. They saw him as a man of strong moral character, someone who would honor and protect Raina in every way. Their relationship became the talk of their church, a shining example of faith and commitment. But not everything was as perfect as it seemed. There were moments when Marcel's discomfort with physical affection became apparent. He avoided certain conversations about their future, and his hesitance to engage in even the smallest displays of intimacy raised questions in Raina's mind. Yet she dismissed these doubts, choosing to believe in the man she thought she knew. As their wedding day approached, neither could have imagined how drastically their lives would change. Raina was filled with hope and excitement, ready to embark on a journey of love and devotion. Marcel, however, was consumed by anxiety, knowing that his carefully constructed facade was about to face its ultimate test. Their union was celebrated as a match made in heaven, a testament to faith and perseverance. But beneath the surface of their vows lay a truth that would soon come to light, a truth that would turn their story of love into a tale of betrayal and unimaginable tragedy. The day everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Marcel Gaines and Raina Porter's wedding was the event of the year, celebrated by their congregation and loved ones. The church was filled with the scent of fresh flowers. The choir sang hymns that moved the crowd to tears. And every detail had been meticulously planned. For those watching, it seemed like a union blessed by heaven itself. Marcel stood at the altar, his broad smile exuding confidence and joy to the congregation. He looked like a man deeply in love, ready to start his life with a woman who had captured his heart. But beneath that composed exterior was a man consumed by anxiety. His mind was racing, not with thoughts of marital bliss, but with a fear that the night ahead would unravel everything he had worked so hard to build. Raina, radiant in her flowing white gown, made her way down the aisle, her heart bursting with love and anticipation. This was the day she had dreamed of since she was a little girl, and Marcel, with his steadfast faith and unwavering devotion, seemed like the perfect man to share it with. She had no reason to doubt him, no reason to suspect that the man she was pledging her life to carried a secret that would change everything. The ceremony was flawless. Vows were exchanged, prayers were said, and the couple was pronounced husband and wife to the thunderous applause of the congregation. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, heartfelt speeches, and a palpable sense of joy. But for Marcel, every passing moment brought him closer to the night he dreaded. While others saw a man basking in the glow of his wedding day, Marcel was calculating every word, every gesture, trying to keep his anxiety hidden. When the celebration ended, the couple retreated to their hotel room, where the reality of their marriage would truly begin. Raina entered the room with excitement and a sense of nervous anticipation. She had waited for this moment, believing it to be the beautiful culmination of their love and faith. Marcel, on the other hand, hesitated. He avoided her gaze, his body stiff as he tried to find the courage to face what was coming. As the evening unfolded and the time came for the newlyweds to consummate their marriage, Raina's joy gave way to confusion, and then to a sense of betrayal. Her discovery came like a thunderclap, shattering the illusion of the man she thought she knew. She looked at him, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. She saw the reason why he never wanted intimacy before marriage. "You lied to me, Marcel. This whole marriage was built on a lie." Marcel, now visibly shaken, tried to explain, his voice trembling with desperation. "You have to understand. No one would accept me otherwise. Now that we're married, you have to stay. It's what the Bible teaches." Raina's voice, steady now, cut through the tension. "So this is it? This is the reason you were against intimacy all this time? To deceive me? Knowing I would have never continued this relationship if I knew? Knowing I wouldn't have married you?" Her words left Marcel speechless. The shame he had spent a lifetime trying to hide was now laid bare. His secret, the very thing he had built his life around concealing, was exposed. Her voice quivered as she continued, her words cutting to the core of his deception. Your penis, Marcel, it's so small. You knew this. And instead of being honest, you chose to trap me in a lie. You manipulated me with faith to cover your selfishness. Your body, she stammered, still processing what she had just discovered. You used faith as a weapon to trap me in a lie. You manipulated me into believing this was about righteousness and purity, but it was all to hide this, your penis, Marcel. Marcel attempted to regain control of the situation, leaning into the authority he had always wielded as a preacher. Raina, you took vows before God. Marriage isn't something you can walk away from. This is about commitment, about sacrifice. But Raina would not be swayed. No, Marcel. Marriage is about trust and honesty, and you've given me neither. You've used your position, your faith, to deceive me. You're worse than what you preach against. Her determination was unshakable as she began to pack her belongings. Marcel's desperation turned to anger. He tried to appeal to her sense of duty, using scripture to justify why she should stay. But Raina, finally seeing him for who he truly was, refused to be manipulated. This isn't love, Marcel, she said, her voice filled with both sorrow and resolve. This is a lie, and I refuse to live my life chained to it. Marcel stood frozen, watching as a woman he had fought so hard to see prepare to walk out his life. The night that was supposed to mark the beginning of their forever had become the moment everything fell apart. What began as a grand celebration of love ended in a hotel room filled with silence, broken trust, and a heavy weight of deception. Marcel, left alone with his shame and anger, would soon realize that his desperation to hide the truth would lead him down a path from which there would be no return. Raina Porter moved purposefully around the room, packing her belongings with firm resolve. Her face was calm, but her heart raced with anger and betrayal. This was not the life she had imagined for herself, not the marriage she thought she was committing to. Marcel Gaines stood frozen, watching her every move, his desperation growing with each passing second. The perfect life he had meticulously crafted was slipping away, and he didn't know how to stop it. Raina, you're not thinking clearly, he said, his voice trembling. You can't just leave. We made vows. We're supposed to work through this together. Raina didn't pause for a second. Marcel, don't you dare talk to me about vows. You lied to me. This marriage is a scam. She looked him directly in the eyes, her voice steady despite her fury. I ain't gonna stay in it. You're worse than what you preach against, and I'll make sure no lady gets deceived by you again. Her words hit him like a blow. His eyes widened as the reality of her words sank in. What are you talking about? He asked, stepping toward her. I was deceived, Marcel, and I'm filing for a divorce, she continued, slamming her suitcase shut. You've lost me, and now I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you. The room fell silent for a moment, her words hanging in the air, slicing through his composure. Marcel's breathing grew heavy. The thought of Raina exposing his secret to the world made his stomach churn. His life as a preacher, his reputation, his standing in the community, everything was on the line. If you were in my position, Raina said, glaring at him, would you stay? Would you live a life built on lies? You can answer that for yourself, Marcel. Now move out of my way. But Marcel didn't move. Instead, he stepped in front of the door, blocking her path. You can't leave me, he said, his voice rising. You can't expose me. Do you know what that would do to me? To my reputation? Raina reached for the doorknob, but Marcel grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Let go of me, she shouted, her voice echoing through the room. You can't do this to me. Marcel yelled, his grip tightening. You can't bring disgrace to me. You can't embarrass me. I thought you would understand. Raina snapped, struggling against his hold. Understand what? That you lied to me? Used me? Manipulated me? Let go of me. Marcel, I am filing for divorce. The confrontation escalated quickly. Raina's defiance only fueled Marcel's desperation. His emotions spiraled out of control, his fear turning into anger. As Raina shouted, Marcel, consumed by rage, struck her. The blow was quick, but its impact was devastating. Raina fell back, her head striking the edge of the bed frame with a sickening thud. He kept hitting her and kept yelling. You can't bring disgrace to me. You can't embarrass me. I thought you would understand. She gave up. When he realized what he had done, he panicked. She crumpled to the floor, motionless. Marcel stared at her lifeless body in horror. The room was eerily quiet now. The only sound was his ragged breathing. He dropped to his knees beside her, shaking her shoulders, calling her name, but there was no response. I didn't mean to, he whispered, his voice shaking. Raina, I didn't mean to. Panic set in. He scrambled to his feet, pacing the room as his mind raced. He knew what he had done, and he knew what it meant. His perfect life was over. In a frantic attempt to cover his tracks, Marcel began cleaning the scene. He wiped surfaces, straightened furniture, and tried to make the room look normal. But his actions were rushed and clumsy. He grabbed a small bag, stuffed it with a few belongings, and fled the hotel. Security cameras captured him leaving in a hurry, his face pale, his movements erratic. Marcel had hoped to escape, but he couldn't outrun the consequences of his actions. The next morning, the housekeeper arrived to clean the room. She knocked on the door. No answer. Using her key, she entered and immediately froze. Raina's lifeless body lay on the floor, blood pooling near her head. The housekeeper screamed, dropping her cleaning supplies and running to alert the hotel staff. Within minutes, the police were called. Detectives arrived at the scene and began their investigation. The suitcase near the door, partially packed, told part of the story. The overturned lamp, faint smudges on the door handle, all hinted at a violent struggle. As they combed through the evidence, the pieces began to come together. Security footage from a hotel showed Marcel leaving in the early hours of the morning, his demeanor suspicious and hurried. The police quickly identified Marcel as their prime suspect. As they dug deeper into the relationship, interviews with friends and family revealed troubling signs about the days leading up to the wedding. Some noted that Raina had confided in them about Marcel's reluctance toward physical affection, but she had chalked it up to his spiritual beliefs. Others recalled Marcel seeming unusually tense and withdrawn during the wedding reception, though at the time they attributed it to typical wedding day nerves. A manhunt was launched. Law enforcement tracked Marcel's movements through credit card records and witness accounts. A gas station attendant reported seeing a man matching Marcel's description, nervously buying snacks and water. After a week, Marcel was finally found, hiding in a rundown motel in another state. He was disheveled, exhausted, and visibly shaken. When officers entered the room, he raised his hands in surrender. "I knew you'd find me," he said quietly as they placed him in handcuffs. During interrogation, Marcel confessed to everything. His voice cracked as he recounted the events of that fateful night. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he said. I couldn't let her leave. She was going to ruin me. She was going to tell everyone about my body's secret, my little penis," he stammered. "She was going to divorce me." But no amount of explanation could undo what he had done. Marcel Gaines, the man once revered as a preacher and moral leader, was now facing the consequences of his actions. Raina's death was a tragedy that left her family and community reeling, and the secret Marcel had tried so hard to hide was now exposed for all to see, leaving him to face not only the law but the loss of everything he had once held dear. The courtroom. On the first day of Marcel Gaines' trial, the once revered preacher who had stood before his congregation preaching morality and righteousness now sat at the defendant's table, his head lowered, his hands trembling. The weight of his actions was now a matter for the court to decide. The prosecution wasted no time laying out their case. They painted Marcel as a man who had meticulously crafted a false image to manipulate those around him. They revealed a history of deceit that stretched far beyond his marriage to Raina Porter. Former acquaintances, ex-congregants, and even distant family members came forward to describe instances where Marcel's actions contradicted the moral code he publicly upheld. Prosecutors highlighted how Marcel's decision to withhold the truth about himself was not a one-time lapse in judgment, but part of a long-standing pattern of manipulation and control. They presented evidence from Raina's personal belongings, including a note she had written in her phone shortly after the wedding night. "This marriage is a lie. Marcel isn't the man he pretends to be." Witnesses were called to testify. Friends of Raina spoke about how she had expressed doubts in the days leading up to the wedding, but dismissed them, believing in Marcel's outward devotion to his faith. A former church member testified about Marcel's controlling behavior in the congregation, describing him as someone who manipulated others under the guise of spiritual authority. On the defense side, Marcel's legal team argued that his actions were not premeditated, but the result of years of psychological struggles. They painted him as a man consumed by insecurities that had their roots in a troubled childhood. They called on a psychologist to testify, explaining how Marcel's deep-seated fear of rejection had driven him to desperation. The defense attempted to garner sympathy, emphasizing that the fatal act was not intentional, but a moment of panic fueled by his unraveling world. However, the jury was not swayed. The evidence of deceit, manipulation, and the brutal nature of Raina's death overshadowed any attempts to justify Marcel's actions. After weeks of emotional testimony and arguments, the jury returned with their verdict. Marcel Gaines was found guilty of second-degree murder. The announcement sent a ripple through the courtroom. Marcel sat motionless, his face pale. As the reality of his sentence sank in, the judge sentenced him to life in prison, citing the calculated nature of his deception and the tragic loss of Raina Porter as reasons for the severe punishment. This court cannot ignore the premeditation behind your actions. Marcel Gaines, your choices have not only taken a life, but betrayed the trust of an entire community. The judge declared. Raina's family, who had been present for every moment of the trial, gave a tearful statement. Her mother spoke of the vibrant, loving woman Raina was, and the unbearable pain of losing her so suddenly and tragically. She trusted you, her mother said, her voice trembling with emotion. You didn't just take her life. You took a part of all of us. And for what? To protect your lives? The courtroom was silent as her words hung in the air, a sobering reminder of the devastating impact of Marcel's actions. Marcel's conviction marked the end of a tragic chapter, but left lingering questions for those who had been closest to him. His story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the consequences of deception. For Raina's family, the trial brought some closure, but the pain of her loss remained. They established a foundation in her name, advocating for honesty and transparency in relationships, hoping to prevent others from falling victim to manipulation. Marcel, now serving a life sentence, was left to confront the reality of his choices. The life he had built on lies was gone, replaced by the stark walls of a prison cell. The secrets he had worked so hard to protect were now known by all, leaving him with nothing but regret and the memory of the woman whose life he had taken. This was a story that began with hope and faith, but ended in betrayal and tragedy, a sobering reminder of the devastating consequences of deception. This story leaves us with heavy but necessary lessons about the dangers of deception in relationships. Trust and honesty are the cornerstones of any meaningful bond, and when they are replaced by manipulation and lies, the consequences can be deadly for the community. This tragedy served as a stark reminder that blind faith can sometimes allow manipulation to thrive unchecked. It's impossible not to ask, was Marcel's crime inevitable? Could Raina have escaped this fate? Or was she trapped by circumstances beyond her control? And deeper still, did Marcel's insecurities and shame create the very person he became, leading to this tragic end? In the end, the truth is clear. In trying to hide his secret, Marcel revealed the darkest parts of his soul, and in doing so, he lost everything. If you found this story valuable, please subscribe for more. This is Ruthless Realities. Until next time.